Hi folks, and welcome to Philosophy According to Eddie. And today we're going to be looking at the idea of religious experience. We're not just looking at miracles here, we're looking at the whole array of religious experiences that occur. And more importantly, the philosophical implications that come from them. All peoples in all cultures have reported religious experiences of some kinds. In fact, a lot of religious figures believe that true religious belief requires religious experience. Problem is, religious experiences are very different to religious interpretations of experiences. Religious experiences make the claim that they've been affected by the divine in some way. However, some would say these are simply interpretations of everyday experiences, but they're religious interpretations or misinterpretations. We must remember, of course, our Cartesian doubt. We can doubt our senses. So, is it that our senses are deceiving us rather than us having a religious experience? This comes from leads into Wittgenstein and Hick's ideas. Wittgenstein's seeing as, the idea that we all see the world differently, to what Hick developed into experiencing as. We all experience the world differently. We have our own personal experiences that no one else can share, and this is very important for religious experience. It's not really a for or against, it is just a point that we experience things ourselves. So this point is a very important frame for the rest of the argument. And that, as Brummer pointed out, we are not only experiencing as and interpreting our experiences in a particular way, but we are convinced about them. And this means some will be convinced that religious experiences have happened, some will be convinced that they haven't. So we're going to look at what William James, Richard Swinburne, Rudolf Otto, and subsequently Ninian Smart believe about religious experiences and how they can be classified, whether they can even be verified. We're also going to look at what David Hume, John Cottingham, Jean-Paul Sartre and Bertrand Russell believe, and how that counters against the idea of religious experience. There are three major types of religious experience to consider here: mystical experiences, conversion experiences, and corporate experiences. Now, the first two are personal. A mystical experience is where a person has a religious experience and it brings about personal change for them. They might change their lifestyle, they might change their beliefs because they feel like they have experienced something religious. However, it falls down on proof. Because it's happened to a single person, no one can prove that they have or haven't experienced it. They could be trying to deceive people. They could believe they've experienced it but not actually experienced it. Conversion experiences again bring about personal change. People who weren't religious before become very religious. The most famous in Christianity is St. Paul on the road to Damascus. Again, there's a problem with proof, but a bigger issue, arguably, is that some people convert from religion as well as to religion, and that does seem to undermine the idea of God being behind religious experiences, a Christian God being behind religious experiences, because loss of faith surely shouldn't happen with these, unless God either is exercising our free will, which is a very generous way of looking at it, or is not powerful enough to influence us. But there's also group experiences. Now, these have got the witnesses to give us some proof. People as a group have a group experience as a corporate experience, not corporate as in to do with businesses. Witnessed by many, great, plenty of proof. However, on the other hand, it could just be mass hysteria, potentially. People do act differently when they're in large groups, and you can become taken away with the emotion of a group. If it is true though, why is God toying with people like this, toying with his believers, or even non-believers, and making them act in ridiculous ways? Taking away our free will and playing with them like toys. And also, why would God simply trifle with a small number of people doing strange and weird and wonderful things rather than sorting out the real problems of the world? These are the questions that face us as we are trying to investigate religious experience. William James, who lived from 1842 to 1910, came up with 4 key aspects for a religious experience. A religious experience for him has to be ineffable, noetic, transient, and passive. Ineffable means it is indescribable. The experiencer cannot describe in words what has happened to them. They are unable to articulate it, speechless, if you will. Noetic is that a different form of knowledge has been passed on. Now this, in this case, is knowledge of God, being given that experience that most people do not get, that knowledge that people don't normally get. Transient, it's a short-lived experience. It is not a permanent state. It only lasts for a short period of time before going back to the real world. And passive, those who experience are out of control of their own bodies. It is the higher power which has taken control of the situation, even of them, and they cannot act. They are powerless in the situation. And these are factors that have been used to describe religious experiences ever since. Rudolf Otto added a little bit into this, particularly when he was talking about personal religious experiences, mystical experiences. So not people being converted to a particular faith, but just an experience of mysticism to one person. And he talks about the idea of the holy, and sort of this feeling, this idea of God being there. The book is called The Idea of the Holy. He talks about this idea of numinous experiences. And numinous means that they transcend the everyday. They are beyond normal. They are extraordinary. And it is, as he quotes it, wholly other to what we would normally experience. It is completely different to a normal experience. He also talks about a feeling of, in Latin, mysterium tremendum et fascinans, or a mystery which is both terrifying and fascinating. So it's this idea of sort of fear, but fascination, awe, shock and awe at what is happening to you. And very much a feeling, an emotional feeling that comes over people. Lillian Smart then built on this and talked about religious experience having their own logic and therefore has its own language. So religious language cannot be reduced to being the same as everyday language. Religious language has its own meaning, has its own logic, because it is completely different in terms of experience as well as in terms of how we understand it. James, Otto and Smart all suggest that religious experience is basically far removed from the everyday. They talk about all these factors and they seem to agree that these things are powerful and indescribable. They make huge differences to the people who experience them, but this leads to a major criticism. Where is the proof? If it's indescribable, firstly, how much credibility do you give to something that's indescribable if someone's trying to tell it to you? But secondly, how are you going to get the proof for these experiences? Now, Richard Swinburne suggests that personal testimony should generally be accepted. He mentions the principle of credulity, i.e., if someone believed something to happen, then it is most likely to be true, based on Occam's razor. If someone believes it happened, it's most likely to be true. And also on the principle of testimony. Generally, we believe what people say unless we've got a good reason not to. So, overall, with all things being equal, we believe believe to be true those things that we believe have happened, and all other things considered, we generally believe others' testimony, and so therefore, from Occam's razor, we should believe people if they tell us they've had a religious experience. However, we're not talking about normal circumstances here, and so the suggestion is abnormal experience requires abnormal proof. We're going beyond the everyday personal testimony, we're going on to something much bigger, we need more proof. The problem is we cannot get into other minds. We cannot tell what other people have experienced. They can't communicate it to us, especially if it's indescribable. And so we can't see that for ourselves and interpret it for ourselves. We have to trust their interpretation. And there could be a problem there, as we'll see when we look at Jean-Paul Sartre. Also, just because people sincerely believe something doesn't mean that it's a valid belief. People sincerely believe all kinds of things that turn out not to be valid beliefs. And, of course, there will be those who fake it. Unfortunately, there will be some people who will fake it. So, personal testimony has got a big problem in that it is personal. And for both mystical experiences and conversion experiences, this becomes an issue. It's less of an issue for corporate experiences, but the sincerity not equaling validity still holds there as well. There are further criticisms from 4 key philosophers. David Hume. People are drawn to the fantastical. Hume points out that people are drawn towards things that are particularly exciting or unexplainable. And on top of that, they are also prone to exaggeration of stories and of memories, particularly if there are very vivid details within those memories. So you put 2 together, the exaggeration, the fact that people are willing and keen to believe, you are likely to end up with misinterpreted interpretations of experiences to make them seem religious, and perhaps they might not be. This is certainly true of corporate experiences. People want to be part of it, people want to believe, and they open themselves up to be receptive to it, and may even believe they have an experience when they don't, or interpret any experience as religious. Russell talks about the physiological effects of various things that can make you experience a different reality. Mind-altering substances, alcohol, drugs, these will make you think you're seeing the world differently. Same with mood, same with sleep. If you're sleep deprived, if you are very, very happy or depressed, it will affect what you see, what you experience. And how you feel as well. You might get a terrible feeling within you, but actually it is physiological. Or it might even be psychological. It could be that you've got like a feeling of foreboding or premonition, but that's not a religious experience, which leads us on to John Cottingham, who suggests numinous experiences, a feeling of transcendence, does not equate to religious experience. Just because it's numinous doesn't mean it's religious. It could be caused by art, by music, by love. It doesn't have to be religion. Sartre talks about the event versus the interpretation, and he says that we are relying on the interpreter to tell us about the event, and therefore we're relying on their interpretation of events. It may be that they have misinterpreted events, and that in fact they were very different, but we must rely on their testimony, bringing us back to the problems of credulity and testimony. We mustn't forget as well, ignorance and self-service. Some people are ignorant and can't explain why it is that they have experienced what they have and put it down to religion. Some people want to make themselves seem better or more exciting than they are, or get attention, and they will either exaggerate or just make up experiences. And finally, just general delusion. We could be dreaming. Anything could be happening to us. This is Descartes again with Cartesian doubt. We can never rule it out. And therefore it could well be that what we're experiencing is not a religious experience but a delusion. Thanks for watching, folks. In this video we've looked at religious experience, how William James, Rudolf Otto and Ninian Smart try to give some idea as to how we can understand personal and corporate religious experiences, but also some of the criticisms that suggest maybe these experiences aren't happening at all, or that they are not religious. So if you've got any questions, let me know. Otherwise, thanks for watching and see you next time.